Well, hey there, you're back on the internet. I still have too much free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Today's ink is by Noodler's Tianamen, and I actually only had it in sample form, so it came in one of these. Can't exactly remember which one. But, yeah, usually it comes in a 3-ounce glass bottle like most of the other Noodler's inks. I, however, only got a sample, but I greatly enjoyed it, and I had it in this MonteVerde Impressa with a 1.1 millimeter stub nib, which it looked great in, so let's check that out. Starting from the top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Now, as you might be able to see, some really good shading. It's a good, rich, dark red ink. Let's see if I can get this a little closer. Yeah, see, like you can see in the little cross section, good shading there. Dry time was a little bit on the long side, but it was a stub and a large-ish stub, so I guess sliding scale. There was no bleed, feather, or spread, so that was good. Water test I felt was actually pretty good for a red ink. Sometimes they like to just slide away, so the fact that that's as readable as it is I felt was pretty good. Next up is Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Here I felt that there was still really good shading. Yeah, let's see if I can... Yep. Again, in the cross section I feel like it came through really well. And in the writing as well. So, again, no bleed, feather, or spread. Some show through, but it is a fairly dark red ink. I actually really liked this red. I like the darker reds, but here it was 22 seconds, so slightly faster dry time. Again, a good water test. It did slightly dye the paper around it, but not too much, and as you might be able to hear, paper started to come apart a little bit, but very readable. Next is Tomoe River. Here I felt that it was actually oddly flattened, or, I mean, it was made to be a very dark red ink, but the shading was not as noticeable as it was on the last two papers. Dry time was pretty long, 38 seconds, but again, it was a fairly broader stub. I mean, it's 1.1 millimeters. The shading I still felt was good. And I called it Echo because this is very thin paper and it is a fairly dark red ink and they were fairly broad lines. So water test I felt was amazing considering it was Tomoe River and considering it was a red ink. So I felt that was very impressive. I think that's very readable. And it did dye the paper around it just a touch, but it actually looks more obvious on camera than it does in real life. So next is 20-pound Copier Paper. Great vibrancy of color. I thought that was very impressive. I did note a very long dry time. 15 seconds for this paper is quite long because it's a very absorbent paper usually. But no bleed, feather, or spread. You still get shading, which again on absorbent papers like this can be a bit difficult. Not all inks can achieve it. And I thought this was a great water test. I think that's very readable. But again, where you put down the most ink is where the most ink remains. So something to consider. No bleed, feather, spread. Show through. There-ish. Next is Mead Notebook Paper. There was bleed, as you can see. But again, it was a stub. And it was a larger stub. There was some feathering, as you'll be able to see, so it wasn't the best behaved. I noted 7 seconds to dry, which when you get this much absorbency, and feathering is from the ink being absorbed into the paper, so when you get this much feathering from it being absorbed and it still takes that long to dry, I was somewhat bothered by that. I felt that that was not a good result. The water test was also very unfavorable. It's a mess. It looks like red tide disease or something. I don't know. It looks disgusting. It's a mess. And lastly is Moleskin notebook paper. I'll give that a minute to focus because my camera's being weird. Sorry about that. So again, 9 seconds to dry, and since I noted the intense feathering that occurs on this paper, and if you'll notice, it's in the narrow strokes as well as in the broader strokes. So it's, yeah, and I felt it was a bad combination. There was extreme feathering. There was a very ugly water test. I mean, you can still kind of read that, but if you've been writing with a smaller hand, that would be a disaster. The bleed was quite bad. I do not recommend it for this paper. So that was Tianamen. That was in there somewhere. I think that was Rouge Hematite. But anyways, so it was a sample. It was a great sample. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it in the stub, which really brought out the shading. And as you can see in the chromatography, there was evidence that it would resist some water, and some evidence of the depth of color that you get, because as you can see, there's almost like light purple, there's some gold, there's some very interesting activity going on in this chromatography, and it was a very interesting ink. I actually am considering buying a full bottle of it, so for your consideration, thanks for watching. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more, and so long from the Triple N Network. Bye.